Hey everyone, and welcome back to this week's video. Have you been trying your hand at Milky Way photography and hit a wall in what can be accomplished using the one-shot method? That is, one photo to get both the sky and the foreground together. Do you find that your underexposed foregrounds are too noisy or that your stars are too streaked? In this video, I'll show you my advanced technique that solves both of these problems so that you can take photos like this, and this in high enough quality to make huge prints. And if you stay till the end, I'll show you how to get special effects in your shot, like this streak from distant car lights. My name is Simon D'Entremont, and I'm a professional nature and wildlife photographer living in Eastern Canada. I make weekly videos giving you photo tips or taking you behind the scenes for nature photography. Subscribe if you want to see more. So we're entering the spring, and if you like shooting nightscapes, you know this is the beginning of Milky Way season. Now I have a whole video on the basics of Milky Way photography, finding the Milky Way, getting away from light pollution, gear, settings, and processing. Watch that for the basics, which you can see right here, as I won't be repeating it all, but make sure you come back. So what's the problem statement of what we're trying to solve here? Trying to take a Milky Way photo of a foreground element, like a tree or a barn, and the sky in the background has three main problems. One, the sky moves in our field of view because the Earth is spinning, so the stars move, rising in the east and setting in the west, at a rate of about 15 degrees per hour. So that's 360 degrees divided by 24 hours. How much is that? Your hand width extended is about 10 degrees, so a hand width and a half per hour. Now how fast that is to your camera depends on how zoomed up you are. On a full-frame camera, how long you can shoot without streaking the stars too much is roughly, in seconds, 500 divided by your focal length. So for my big 500mm lens, 1 second. For 50mm lens, 10 seconds. And for a common Milky Way photography lens like 20mm, that's 25 seconds. But with high megapixel sensors and smaller sensors like crop sensors, it's even less, maybe 10 to 15 seconds for many setups. But to get enough brightness in your photo with a 10-second exposure, even with a fast lens like f2.8 or f2, you're still at ISO 5000 or 6400 or 8000. Your images of the sky are noisy at the short exposures you're forced to take. That's problem number one. Problem number two is that when you take short exposures like 10 or 15 seconds in the complete dark, remember Milky Ways are best photographed with no light pollution nor moon, the land comes out totally dark. Very dark, and you either have a photo with a featureless black foreground, or if you try to raise the exposures in processing, you get a noisy mess as it's super underexposed. And problem number three is that in the dark, we need all the light we can get, so we shoot our lenses wide open or close to wide open with super thin depths of field. But how do we get our foreground element in focus at f1.8 or f2? Landscapes are often shot at f8 to get everything in focus, but we can't do that for Milky Way photography. So how do we solve these three problems? First, let's tackle the noisy sky problem. We solve this with common techniques used in deep space astrophotography: stacking or tracking. Stacking is where you digitally stack multiple images to reduce the noise. This gives you similar results to having longer exposures. Now you can also get these longer exposure benefits by using a star tracker, a device that tracks the rotation of the Earth. But in this video, I'm going to focus on getting good pics just using a regular tripod. Now stacking is very powerful, and it's even used in astrophotography even if you have a telescope mount to track the rotation of the Earth. Here's what 50 shots stacked looks like, and also tracked on a telescope mount. Now how does this work? When you digitally stack photos, the software compares pixels between several images. If the pixel is the same in all the photos, let's say a bright star, the algorithm is programmed to say, hey, that must be a real bright spot. Let's leave that in. But if in each photo the pixel is bright, then dark, then medium gray, very random, then the algorithm is programmed to say, hey, that must just be random noise. Let's ignore that or average it out. So the more images you stack, the cleaner and cleaner your images get. Great, but what about the movement of the sky? How do we stack images of moving subjects? There are two options you can use. The first is to use Photoshop using layers, By first aligning our images and then merging several photos together, we can improve the signal to noise ratio and get our images cleaner. The weakness with this technique is that while the sky is moving, the land isn't. So you need to separate the sky from the land, stack the sky, and put them back together. The second option is to use dedicated software, like what I use, a free Windows program called Sequator. Equator with an S. I'll leave a link in the show notes below where you can get it. For Mac, you can buy a similar program called Starry Landscape Stacker. Link below to that one as well. The beauty of these programs is that they do all the steps automatically. Separate the sky and the land, then stack them both, then put them back together. Awesome! How many sky images should you use for this technique? I'd suggest at least 8, but more than 15 gives little extra benefit. I tend to use 10 to 12. Here's what a stack of 12 looks like compared to one image. You can clearly see the stacked photo looks cleaner than a single shot. Now what about our next two problems, the noisy underexposed foreground and the thin depth of field? We're going to tackle these two together. While the sky is moving and we need to keep exposures short there to keep streaking our stars, the land isn't moving, so we have time to put that to our advantage. To get the foreground properly exposed, we're going to take a long exposure to get it an appropriate brightness. So rather than 10 or 15 seconds for our sky shot, we could take a 1 or 2 minute exposure. But wait, at f1.8 or f2, we might only get a thin slice of the foreground in focus. So I make the aperture smaller, like f2.8 or f4. But note that this will make our 1 minute exposure at f2, 4 minutes at f4. And if we want to get a clean background, I might lower the ISO too. So rather than shooting the sky at ISO 3200 like we commonly do, I might shoot the foreground at ISO 1600 or 800. So that's the plan. Rather than shooting one photo of the sky and the foreground at the same time, we're going to take several images of the sky at a fairly high ISO and stack them together for maximum resolution and reduced noise. Then we're going to take one slower, longer exposure of the land, slowly building up enough exposure to get it pretty and clean, and then we're going to stitch the two of them together in Photoshop to get the best of both worlds. Now, a few more field tips on how to do this before I show you the software part in action. For your sky shots, you want to take them in quick succession. Try to minimize the movement between exposures so that the software has an easier time in stacking them. I use a shutter release or the 2-second timer to ensure I don't get shake when I hit the shutter button. Now you don't want to shoot the foreground at infinity like the sky. You want to focus somewhere into your foreground. What I like to do is walk into the scene a bit, like next to a tree or the barn or a building, whatever my subject is, and place my headlight on the ground and focus manually on that. There's more depth of field after a focus point than before, so I usually place my light right in front of my subject. Then I go get my light back, set my camera on bulb, and take a long exposure using my camera app on my phone or a remote shutter. Now, how do you know how long an exposure to take on the foreground? You can take test exposures, but waiting 7 or 8 minutes to learn that it's too long or too short is a slow process in the middle of a dark field at midnight. What you can do is use an exposure calculator, like the one in a great app called Photopills. Super for planning Milky Way shots. Here's what I do. I crank my ISO to the highest it will go, let's say 25,600, and my lens wide open. Then I take test exposures to see what length shutter speed gets the land properly exposed. Because my lens is wide open and the ISO really high, the exposures come up quite short. Then I open up Photopills and input my test exposure settings. Go to Exposure and set Calculate to shutter speed. Let's say f2, 6 seconds, and ISO 25,600 worked for my test exposure. This app will calculate my new shutter speed at different settings. So if I want to shoot at f4, ISO 1600, it tells me I need a 6-minute, 24-second exposure with those settings. That's what I'll have to shoot. And this will change for every scene, by the way. So in the field, I frame my photo and I take 10 to 12 sky shots at high ISO, focused at infinity. In this case, 15 seconds, f1.4, ISO 1600. If I was using an f2.8 lens, I'd probably shoot at ISO 6400. Then one long exposure refocused on the foreground at a smaller aperture and lower ISO without moving my tripod. In this case, 249 seconds, f2, ISO 1600. First, some observations about these shots. I shot the Milky Way against this big stone church as a subject. We're actually in the back of the church, as that's what aligns with the Milky Way to the south, but also the front of the church has lots of light and a car dealership across the street, so lots of light pollution. At 100% zoom of these 15-second exposures using a 20mm lens, we still have a wee bit of streaking, but not a big deal. So let's look at my shot for the foreground. I shot this at f2 for a little bit more depth of field than f1.4 wide open, so even the grass right in front of me is in focus. Luckily, wide-angle lenses have deep depths of field. Secondly, the stars are obviously streaked in this shot as it was 249 seconds, but it doesn't matter, we're not going to be using the stars from this shot. Luckily, the trees were still sharp as it wasn't windy. A tip for you there, if you want to use this technique and have trees in the shot, a calm night is better. And finally, let's look at image quality. If I were to try and use one of my 15-second exposures for my foreground, and I raise the exposure to an equivalent brightness to my long exposure, check out the difference in image quality, even if both shot at ISO 1600. Remember, ISO doesn't cause noise in itself. Lack of light causes noise, and ISO is just a correlation, not the cause. Hey, a quick reminder to follow me on social media, where I almost always include a photo tip with every post, and sign up on my email list to get my guide for shooting in backlit situations. Link below. So for processing, I like to start in Lightroom, where I first focus on the sky shots. You can pre-process your photos before stacking if you like. You process one to taste, then copy those settings, then paste the settings to all the photos. I don't recommend applying noise reduction, as stacking will be doing that for you. Maybe apply a little bit of an S tone curve, get the highlights and shadow levels right. And get the white balance correct, although you may need to tweak to match the foreground later. You can use Photoshop for stacking the sky, but I like to use Sequator. Sequator recommends RAW, but sometimes I'll pre-process my photos first. I haven't found it makes a lot of difference. It makes it easier to place your sky shots in a separate folder. Create a folder to use. Then from Lightroom, select all your sky shots, select Export, then select your folder and use Original for RAWs or TIFF for pre-processed photos. JPEG will even work if you're just doing this for Instagram and Facebook to make the file smaller. So in Sequator, go to Star Images, right-click, Add, and select your images from the folder you stored them in. Then under Output, name your file name for after stacking. Under Composition, select Align Stars, select Best Pixels. You can select Freeze Ground if you don't have a separate foreground shot. Even with a separate foreground shot, I select it to make the land boundary more predictable for later. Hit Selective to take out airplane light trails. Under Sky Region, click Irregular Mask and paint the sky with your cursor. There are a number of other options that you can experiment with if you don't get good results from basic settings. Auto Brightness is a good one to experiment with. Then Start. This will create a new photo of your stacked sky. Look here to see how much cleaner the stacked photo is compared to one exposure. As for your land shot, since you've properly exposed it, it's less work. Just process it to taste. Play with the shadows and highlights, maybe add some saturation if the light was flat. The next step is to combine the two halves, your stacked sky and the long exposure land shot, in Photoshop. And there's a great tool for this. Load up your land shot first. From Lightroom, right-click, open in Photoshop. The trickiest part of merging the land and sky shots are complex structures like trees where the intersection can get screwed up a bit. The best way to deal with this is using an algorithm specifically designed for this in Photoshop. So with your land shot already loaded, hit Edit, Sky Replacement. Or we're not going to use someone else's sky, we're going to use our own. Hit this arrow to the right, then go to the bottom to import sky images. Then go to the location of your stacked sky shot. Then select it. At this point, you can move the background around if not well aligned, and you can use scale if you need to adjust the sizing to fit. You can also play with Shift Edge and Fade Edge to merge the two halves better. At that point, you can process the two halves individually in Photoshop, or merge the two halves as a new photo and go to Lightroom to process them further. Process your photo to taste, and make sure the white balance of the two halves match. See how the sky moves behind the trees? Before the sky replacement technique, this was really hard. And a bit of processing to taste, and voila, a final product. Here's some more Milky Way shots processed using this technique. But wait, I promised you a bonus tip. How did I get these car light trails in this photo? Easy. I made sure the length of the land photo was long enough to allow the cars to enter the frame and exit it, and timed the land exposure to be right before a car entered the frame. The car was over 1 kilometer away on a narrow and curvy road, so it took a while. So I lowered my ISO until the length of the exposure matched the time it took for the car to pass. And here's the final image. Note that I found a place in the wooden trail that was a mirror image of the road below for a nice artistic effect. If you want a repeat of the basics of astrophotography, I have a whole video on that right here. And I hope that you can use these tips to go out this Milky Way season and take your best ever Milky Way photos. I know you can do it.